Good evening and welcome back to our Parsha webcast. This week is the Parsha of Shelach, and as always we will first give a quick synopsis of the subject matter that is discussed in this lengthy portion, and then we will zero in on one or 2 points. So the portion this week, the bulk of it, talks about the famous story of the spies that Moshe sent to the land of Israel to look, to see what it is, what kind of people are there, the whole long story. He sent 12 men to check it out with the intention of coming back to the Jewish people and informing them what they saw, so to boost up the morale, to give them the assurance that this is not a problem, we're going to go and we're going to be able to conquer it, it's going to be great. He chooses 12 great men. Among them is Yehoshua, his favorite student, and Caleb, and another 10 men, and he sends them, and they go. And they go through the breadth, the length, and the breadth of the land, and after 40 days they come back. And when they come back, one of the worst rebellions against God and Moshe take place. 10 of these 12 men turn against Moshe, turn against God, turn against the whole plan to go to Israel, and they basically gave a terrible report, saying that the people there are giants and we'll never be able to conquer it, and this is terrible, and we shouldn't go, we should stay in the desert. And they demoralized all the people. It was just a complete moral breakdown. People said, we had enough of Moshe, let's appoint ourselves a new leader, and let's go back to Egypt. Do you imagine? And they cried that whole night. The whole people wept, and they cried. And God and the 2 others, Yehoshua and Caleb, like loyal shluchim, loyal messengers, emissaries of Moshe, came back. They told him, no, they're not right. It's a wonderful land, and you should continue to move on to. But people heard what they wanted to hear, as oftentimes happens. Once people make up their mind, you can talk to the wall, and there's nothing you can do to change them sometimes. And Yeshua and Caleb's words fell on deaf ears, and they could not convince the people that the right thing to do is listen to Moshe and to go to the land, and so on. And God steps in and is enraged. He is so angry at what happened over here. And God says to Moshe, he says to Moshe, I had enough of them. I plan to destroy them. This is a rebellion. This is not the first time. I'm done. As Moshe, as always, the faithful leader, tells God, you can't do this. Forgive them. They're good. It's overlook this. And God has a change of heart. And he says, okay, I will overlook this, but there is going to be consequences to this rebellion. What's the consequence? And now this whole generation, he made a decree that they will not merit to go into the land. Instead, they will die in the desert. And instead of going immediately to the land, which was the original plan, he said, you're going to now pay for the 40 days that they went to Israel, and they did what they did. I'm going to pay them a year for a day. And for every day, they're going to spend a year in the desert. And that's how we ended up 40 years in the desert, until that whole generation died. And once a new generation was born, they merited to enter the land. When the Jewish people heard this, they were terribly upset, and they realized what a mistake they made. The 10 spies died immediately. Yeah, they had a terrible death. And the people said, no, we want to go. Now we are ready to go. And so God said, no, you're not going. It's too late. So they tried. They made an attempt. They started moving, climbing the wall. They started climbing the mountain to go towards Israel. God said, I'm warning you. And they got there was a war broke out with the Amalekites and struck them dead. And there was another tragedy, one tragedy on top of the other. And there began the 40-year sojourn in the desert. So you can imagine what kind of depressing moment this was. And guess when this happened? This happened on Tisha B'Av. On the 9th of Av is when this happen.
Wow.
God said to Moshe, they're crying now for no reason.
Wait.
But in punishment, I'm going to give them a good reason to cry on this night. And Tisha B'Av became the terrible, tragic day in the history of the Jewish people. Many tragedies befell us. The first temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed. Other tragedies befell the Jewish people. And indeed, on that night, Tisha B'Av, there was many a reason to cry over the terrible tragedies that happened. But then there was no reason to cry because it was all false. There was no problem. Israel was a good place. And that's what Moshe tried to impress upon him, but he was unsuccessful. But at least he saved them. He saved the Jewish people from annihilation. Again.
And is that because the people were not listening to Moshe? They just took what the spies had said?
It wasn't only they didn't listen.
Instead of believing to Hashem.
They were ready to go back to Egypt with a new leader. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible rebellion against God.
A straw on the camel's back.
It wasn't a straw. This alone was why the straw? This was not the straw. This was itself a terrible.
But throughout the whole thing, they
There was a lot of bad times.
They were right.
Throughout the which whole thing?
Since they left Egypt.
Since they left Egypt, they were always
nothing
complaining.
like this. I mean, there was the golden calf, and then this. This was
worse than the golden calf.
In a way, this was worse than the golden calf. I don't know.
always
We have to understand that. Why was it worse?
This probably is.
How do you know it was worse? By the way,
Yeah, this is just as
I'm asking
bad.
you.
maybe
Why
just
was
as
it
bad.
worse?
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
But you send 12 people to the same place.
Not
They
same
basically see the same things.
Right.
What's different is the interpretation, because the 10 say in the beginning it's Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, it's milk and honey.
Yeah.
But then when Caleb ben Yefuneh and Yeshua, they took what God say, that this is the promised land, and they became to an argument. So then they start to say we are like Chagavim. We are nothing compared
No, they
to...
said that first. They said that first, I believe. They said basically a bad report. And when Yeshua and Caleb tried to tell the people, no, it's not what they're saying, the people said, let's stone them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I
Really?
say. So that's why I say that.
Oh,
you know.
wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Terrible. And then the portion has a few other small subjects. One is about the sacrifices, how much meal offering to bring with every sacrifice, how much wine to pour on the altar with every sacrifice. And then he talks about the mitzvah of challah, to separate a piece of the dough to give to the kohen with every dough that you make. And we still do that. We don't give it to the kohen because it has a holy status, and today outside, but you can't eat it there, so we burn it. And then he talks about the terrible incident that happened in the desert with the wood collector. It was a man that violated the Shabbos in public. He collected wood, and God said to stone him, because that was the punishment for violating the Shabbos like that. So they stoned him. The rabbis tell us, incidentally, that he did it l'shem shamayim. He did it for the sake of heaven. Because people, to show that God means business. So he gave up his life to show how serious Shabbos is. Rabbis tell us that it wasn't just a guy that decided one day to violate the Shabbos. And then the last subject of the Parsha is the mitzvah of tzitzis. The mitzvah of the talis and the mitzvah of tzitzis. The biblical commandment to put tzitzis on your four-cornered garments, which we do, of course, till today. We have the undergarment, then we have the tzitzis, the talis, that we the prayer shawl that we use by davening, and so on. So that, in a nutshell, is the subject of today's parsha. What I want to talk about is two things. Number one, this was a good question you asked. Well, you made a comment that is quite accurate. It seems that this event was even worse than the event or the incident of the golden calf.
Oh.
Why?
That's what they say, huh?
Why you would think
But
the other
first
way? This
you
was
can
idol worship.
First
is
you
worse.
can say it by the reaction of God and Moses.
What was the
Because
reaction?
before they just killed 3,000 people.
Yeah,
now
yeah.
they have to pay with 40 years in the desert
Right.
to clean them up.
Right.
So
So that's the question. Why, in the case of the golden calf, did God forgive the Jewish people at the end of the day? They were forgiven, and there was no consequences. There were some consequences, but not to the degree of what one would expect. Whereas by this incident with the spies, it seems that this was so grievous a sin that God said there's going to be consequences. I am not forgiving them. In other words, yes, I'll forgive. I won't kill them now, but they're not going into Israel. He punished them, and there was no way they were going to get out of that. That decree was not going to be, and it wasn't done away with. So, in other words, the punishment for this sin, Moshe did not succeed in gaining forgiveness, whereas the punishment of annihilation by the sin of the golden calf, he was successful to overturn. And the question is, one would expect the other way, that it would be just the opposite. That when the whole nation worshipped an idol, a golden calf, that's idol worship. Idol worship is the worst sin. You would think that over there God would be much more enraged than he was over here. Yet over here they're not forgiven, over there they are forgiven. So that's a question number one. I want to explain why I think that is. Yeah?
Well, you ask us or...
No, you had a question. You want
No, I said the calf was, they meant to do well.
What do you mean they meant to do?
Okay, Moses went to the mountain, he's already there 40 days.
Yeah.
They needed something substance to have. They meant well, but they did something wrong.
What do you mean they meant well? I don't know what you mean by that.
They
How do you
needed
mean well when you go
they
create
need
a golden calf?
something to take place of Moses between God and them.
But they said that this is the God.
They-
Eile Elokecha Yisrael, they said. This is God.
I think it was more a corridor for the,
Fine, you want it,
for-
that's an interpretation.
it
That's
was,
interpretation, but
in a way,
it's
because Moses not there, and Moses is the son for them toward God.
but this was a
No,
sin of
yeah.
idol
But
worship.
I think
Yeah.
that he probably forgave them because they were so soon, that they were so, it was so soon that they left Egypt and they were at the 49th level, almost. Their souls were going to be
No,
lost forever.
this was
Wasn't it?
already after the Torah was given. This was way
okay.
after that.
But the calf?
No, the
I'm talking about
calf,
the calf.
no.
It was after the Torah was given, yes.
No, he dropped, when he saw it, he dropped the Torah.
No, but the Ten Commandments were given to them. This was 40 days after the Ten Commandments.
The
were
golden
given.
calf?
Yeah.
The gold. I thought it's before, really.
No, I
No,
know it was
Hashem
before.
No.
laid down.
Oh, really?
The revelation at Sinai was 40 days before that.
So what was the Ten Commandments?
They didn't have
There was the tablets.
They didn't
He
have the
didn't have the
a
tablets yet.
summary of all the Torah.
No, he didn't give
Yeah.
them the tablets yet, so
Yeah.
he shattered them. But they heard the ten. It was already after the revelation
I
at
didn't
Sinai.
know that.
The answer that I want to point out, and then we'll move on to the next thing, is
But
in
it's a
this
point.
incident of the
What
golden
level were they
calf.
at after they got the Torah?
What? The
You
50th
start
level of
before- out
holiness.
They were the
49
highest
so they were at the highest
Yes,
level now.
the highest level of
they're-
holiness, and then they
they're-
stooped again.
And now what level are they at when as soon as they
But
stoop?
what level could you
49?
be when you're
49.
worshipping a golden calf?
49.
Very bad, yeah. So the answer that I'd like to point out is in the words of the Torah itself. In the incident of the golden calf, you know what it says over there? By Yakumu, they got up the next morning with Tzachik. What does it say? They got up, they were jolly, they were happy, they were dancing. It was a happy, festive moment for them. They had an uplifted spirit, very bad. It was a bad type of uplifting spirit. They were happy for all the wrong reasons, but they were happy. What does it say over here? I'll read it to you. Here. I'll read you the words. The entire assembly raised up and issued its voice. The people wept that night. They cried. Over here they're laughing and dancing. Over here they're crying and weeping. Hashem looks at these two situations. He says, over here they're happy for very wrong reasons, but they're uplifted. They're not depressed. They're not down, melancholy. We can make something with these people. They'll repent. They'll get their act together. We can send them, bring them to Israel, and make a nation and make a land with them. They can build a land. People with a good spirit can build a land. But when he saw this, that they were depressed and crying and down and nudniks and very, with that kind of attitude, he said, I can't build an Israel with such people. So I won't kill them now. I'll let them live out their life, but they'll do it here in the desert. This is not a nation that I can work with. People that fall apart like this and become depressed like this, a mass depression. We can't work. We can't build a land of Israel with a people that are so down and so melancholy and so with such a bad attitude. He said, "There's nothing I can do with such people." Okay, you want me to not kill them now? I'll kill them. They'll die. Fine, I won't kill them. I won't punish them. But to bring them to Israel, this is not a generation that I can bring to Israel. With them, I can't build anything. We'll have to wait for a next generation to do it. People that have a different attitude. It's a lesson in life, by the way. You want to build anything in life, you have to be full of life. You want to inspire a generation, you want to inspire people, you want to build a community, you want to build Judaism, you want to build Israel. You have to have a smile on your face. You have to be ready to dance. Jolly, happy, moving, not so calculated and every, a lebedikite. There has to be life in your bones, in your blood. If you're depressed, it could be you didn't do half as bad a sin as the ones that were jolly and were dancing around the calf. Undoubtedly, in the measure of sin, the golden calf must have been worse. But look what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a terrible kind of attitude, and therefore Hashem said, I can't build it. With this kind of attitude, let them stay in the desert better.
I'm sure Moshe Rabbeinu argued for the Jewish people as best as anyone ever could.
He did.
But at the same time...
But Hashem was practical and said, I need to build a land. And it ain't happening with this kind of people.
I want to ask you this.
Think yourself. Think about this yourself. You want to build a business, you want to build an enterprise, you want to build a family, you want to build anything.
If you have doubts and a negative attitude,
you're done.
But
you
they're
can't do
still
anything.
just human beings. They just left
Exactly.
a land of slavery.
That's exactly
Walked
right. So
through
God
the
said,
desert.
let them be in the desert. I won't kill them. They can enjoy life in the desert.
If you're going to pick people on your team, what kind of team are you
Right.
going to build?
You're right.
Just
You're
heard
gonna-
some news.
So it's like saying,
No,
you know what it's...
you can't say no. You're here.
Hello.
3,000 years
Let
later.
me speak. When you just took a lot of people out of prison. Let's say you went to the state penitentiary, you just released a bunch of people, and you're expecting to build with them a project. And you have all good intentions, you took them out of their prison, you say, let's get going. And then you see, after a few months, you see these people there's no one home, there's no one to talk to. So you're going to say, but it's not their fault. I'm not faulting them, I'll let them live, I'm not going to punish them. Let them live out their life with their children, I can build a project.
But you are faulting them because they were
I'm not
they were
faulting them.
crying.
Making
They were
excuses.
Exactly.
Making
upset.
excuses.
Just
They
being
were
human.
upset, so that's it. There's nothing. So God is saying, this is not a judgment. I'm being practical. I need to bring these people to build Eretz Yisrael. I can't do with prisoners. You're right. There's not their fault that they're prisoners, but they are prisoners, and they cannot get out of that mentality. They're depressed. They're low. They're fallen by the spirit. They have it's not going to happen.
He didn't kill them there.
He didn't kill them.
Right.
He let them
live.
He
But
let them live.
notice Hashem opened the door, and they said, "No, I don't want to go."
They were not ready for it. They weren't able. That's what Hashem said to
they want to go
Moshe.
back to
Here they
Egypt,
will
that was
remain
part
in
of
the
it.
desert. But they cannot be the ones I can trust to build the next generation in Israel. My mission in life, which all of creation stands upon, I can't rely on people that cry all night over and live in fear and the smallest bump in the road, and they want to go back to Egypt. With such people, I can't live.
But
I can't build.
You take the example with the prisoner. You can still say, I mean, it's rhetorical, but you can still say, I will find a way to educate them. I find another way to work with them. I don't give up.
Yeah.
It's like we're coming here, you say, I have a guy like Meir, what I needed, I'm going to wait 40 years and give a class after 40 years.
What?
Yeah.
He didn't stop giving classes.
No.
He learned with them, and he spoke to them, and he built, and he learned
no good.
He says that the generation of the desert was a very lofty and successful generation as far as learning and growing spiritually. They were on the highest level.
It's going to be easier.
But my question is this.
Listen.
Yes. Sorry.
What I'm trying to say is, when you have to be practical, they're ready to go into Israel now. They were about to go into, the plan was they're going to be, in a week, they're going to be in Israel. They just said, let's just send people to see how it is. Okay, you want to send. They come back and this is what they do. So what are you saying? That God should waste now to try to educate them. Fine. We'll stay in the desert and we'll educate them. That's exactly what he did.
No, rhetorical, I understand. I'm not arguing with God, but I just say you can make an argument. But you can make another argument. God promised the land to Israel, right?
Yes.
So why Moses take a 12th spy to check the
Because
country?
the people wanted it. The people demanded it.
Oh, they put the
Yeah, the
pressure on
people
him.
wanted it. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, the people wanted it.
But
Let me move on to the next
He took the
one.
brightest of them.
Yes,
He
exactly.
took the
They were pious.
brightest.
They were
the whole
pious, God-fearing men. They
Listen
weren't.
to the next. It's going to be. You'll listen to this. The story goes that Moshe chose these people, and at the end, the Torah mentions all the 12 people he chose, and then he says like this. Listen to this verse. These are the names of the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Hosea bin Nun Yehoshua. He changed his name from Hosea to Joshua. So Rashi says, and listen to Rashi's
God
words.
with you.
No, look.
God you should.
Listen to this. Moses called Hosea by the name Joshua. He changed his name. So Rashi says, he prayed for him. May God save you from the plot of the spies.
They knew ahead of time.
What's that? What's that? Moshe prayed for Joshua that he shouldn't fall into that God should save him from the plot of the spies. Now let's take a look. One Rashi before. One second. It says over here, they were all distinguished men, the Torah calls them. These 12 men were distinguished men. And he says they were called in the Torah Anoshim. Every instance of the word Anoshim, which means men, but it means more than men, it means distinguished men, is an expression of importance. He shows the most important of the people of Israel. And he says, you would think these are shlachs, these are good for us, look what they did. No. Although the spies would later sin, at that time, when they were sent, they were kosher, they were honorable, they were tzaddikim, they were good people. So if that's the question, this seems like a pure contradiction. The very next Rashi, here he says that at that time they were still kosher, honorable, distinguished. But the very next Rashi, it says that Moshe had to make a special prayer for his student Joshua that he should be saved, God should save him from the plot of the spies. That means already they're not so good anymore.
Well, he had a prophecy.
Are they good or they're not good? What were they? Were they kosher at that time? And if they're kosher, there's no plot. Or is there a plot? And you have to pray for Joshua that he shouldn't fall. And the bigger question is, if they're not good, and Moshe detected that something's wrong, and for that reason he has to pray, why are you sending them? Well, you know, for trouble, stop the whole thing. It
They
wasn't
were
as
good at
if...
the time, but then when they got there,
No, but
No,
he had the
Moshe
prophecy
supposed
before.
prayed for him before.
He had the prophecy.
Right then,
before.
Moshe prays for Joshua, God should help you from their plot. That means you're seeing a plot there, there's no good.
Prophecy,
Why are you
right?
sending them? But if you know the prophecy, then why send them?
Right.
Right.
If you know that there's a problem over here, why are you sending them? It's not as if God told them to send them. It was Moshe. God gave Moshe the choice.
But that's the interpretation of Rashi. You can listen. You can say that Rashi is not.
It's not an
Excuse me,
what do you
yeah.
mean?
Ah,
It's not an interpretation of Rashi. First of all,
no.
No, it quotes the Medrash, the Gemara, and this is.
Oh, if it is, then it's really big question.
And
Sends him because
Rashi,
people
by the
demanded
way,
it,
yeah, the man people demanded.
and so therefore he did it.
That's
Because
what he
if he
did.
didn't do it.
But if he didn't, but if he saw it's only trouble, he shouldn't have done it.
So why did
But
But
they-
then,
but
but
the people
then,
wouldn't have,
they would have
listened
gone
to him
in, and then he would
anyway.
have had
What would he
yuck
have
to
had?
work with.
No, he would have had a
No, the
problem
point
anyway.
is, if he sees that you're sending 12 men on a mission,
Yeah.
and you know from before that these 12 men are trouble,
10,
who
yeah.
would you send them?
No.
Well, who would send them? If you don't send it, you send other people. You right away, you choose other people. And if you're going to tell me that there's no one else that was good, you don't send. You don't make a mission that's bound to fail. If you know it's going to fail, what are you doing? So let me share with you a thought that the Rebbe explains on this problematic two Rashis. It seems like a contradiction, and it's a big problem. He says the following. There's no contradiction.
But if he didn't send them, they all would have gone in.
The Jewish people would have went.
And
It
then
would be
they
great.
wouldn't have done what they were supposed to do,
Why
like
not?
like set up a temple.
They
And,
would.
But the
Why
people-
would-
why?
would
You
have
got the
happened
10
40 years
whole,
earlier.
10 tzaddik who
But if
were
the
saying,
people- No, but if the people were demanding that he send 12 spies, they wouldn't have tolerated not somebody going in there. They
No,
would've-
that's not true. Moshe is not is not a man, he's not one of these leaders that fall, the people are pressuring him so he does things. Moshe doesn't do things because people pressure him to do it. Moshe does things because it's the right thing to do. And if it wasn't the right thing to do, why did he do it? If he knew that there's a plot and it's going to fail, why are you doing it? Because the people want it. You don't do things just because people want it. If you know it's bound to fail, you do things that people are asking you to do if you hope that it's going to be successful. But if you know it's a failure, what are you doing? So the Rebbe answers he didn't know it was a failure.
Rabbi says what?
It said that there's no contradiction over here whatsoever. When Rashi says that they were kosher at that time, they were truly kosher. And Moshe was under the impression that this is a good mission. Nevertheless, even though he says in the very next Rashi that Moshe prayed for Joshua, that he shouldn't fall into the plot of the spies, it does not mean that he knew that the spies were no good. So what he praying? Oh. So the Rebbe points to the nuances in the verse over here, which are very interesting. And there's a tremendous lesson to be learned. What happened over here was like this. Only if you understand the Hebrew will you appreciate this. Huh?
You have to
You know,
understand the Hebrew.
But so he says, he points out that in this portion, there are two things. There's something called a meraglim, which means spies. In Hebrew, the spies are meraglim. It's interesting to note that although we translate, we always call them spies, nowhere in this Parsha does it say that does he call them meraglim. Does not call them spies. What does he call them? So he points to the fact that it says over here like this. God spoke to Moshe saying, send forth for yourself men and let them viaturu et eretz Canaan. What does viaturu mean?
Travel.
They will traverse. They will traverse. They'll visit. Viaturu means they'll visit. What does it say after they go? Here. These are the men, Eile Shmota Anashim, these are the men that Moshe sent, Latur et Haaretz, to visit the land, not to spy the land. It doesn't say to spy the land. Listen a minute. You see where the Rebbe is going with all this. What does it say when they came back? First, before they left, they ascended, Vayaturu et Haaretz, they visited the land. It doesn't say they spied the land. What does it say when they came back? Vayashuvu mitur haaretz. They came back from the visit to the land. Nowhere does the Torah over here refer to them as spies. What was their mission? What did Moshe want them to do? To go visit for what purpose? So here's why he sent them. He sent them to visit the land. Go see the land. That's all I'm asking you. See who lives there, what's it look like, what's the terrain. See the land. What's a visitor and what's a spy? What is the difference between a visitor and a spy? A visitor has anything to hide?
No.
When you're going to visit a place, you're hiding, you're camouflaged, you're nothing. You're a visitor, you're looking. You're touring. You're touring the land. He sent them as tourists. Go tour the land and come back and tell us what you saw. A spy is a very different thing. A spy dresses like the people he's spying against. He speaks the language, he learns their ways. He's hiding something. He's disguising himself. What does Joseph tell the brothers when they came to Egypt and they didn't recognize him? He recognized them. You remember that story when they came to buy food, provisions? Mm-hmm. He accused them of what? Meragli matem, you are spies. And he tells them, you came to see, you didn't come to buy food, you came to see how to conquer this land. Then that's a spy. One second. You have a question? Go ahead.
No. It's okay.
You'll hear the point. Moshe did not want them to go as spies. He never asked them to go as spies. He asked them to go visit, to be tourists. What happens next? Even before they went, they came back to Moshe and said, tell us, what should we look for? Tell us give us a mess. Should we look if the people are strong or if they're not strong? If the cities are fortified or if they're open without walls around them? He started hearing that they are looking to add to this mission. They're ready. There's something that they are looking for beyond what I sent them. So although it's not yet completely suspicious that there's a disaster, there's no reason for him to say, I'm stopping the mission. Because they looks like they're plotting something that I didn't ask them, but it could be the plot is for good reasons. In other words, they took upon themselves to become spies. Now, a spy could be a good thing. A spy could be very helpful to a country. Right?
Right.
As many are.
Uh-huh.
So he had no reason yet to say this is a failure. Because maybe they'll be good spies. But it's already spies. It's not what I asked for. So his faithful student Yeshua, he says, Yeshua, you I'm praying for, God should help you from this plot. I'm not sure it's a bad plot. And that's why I'm not canceling the mission. It's a plot, but it's a plot. It's not what I asked for. And what's the problem with a plot? They're looking to be spies. It's cunning. After all said and done, a spy develops a certain, I don't want to call it dishonest, but you have to be a little sneaky, deceptive, exactly. Moshe is a man of emes. Moshe exemplified pure truth. So he didn't want them to be deceptive. He wasn't looking for it. That's not what he wanted them to go. The people asked to go see it. Go see it. Go tour the land for 40 days, come back. But when he started hearing that they're looking to already, they added to this mission, and they're looking to become spies when I didn't look for them. So although it could be they'll come back and they'll be wonderful spies, and it could be it'll be great, so I'm not stopping this. But for Yeshua, which is going to be the fulfillment of Moshe, he's the one that's taking over Moses' position after Moshe dies. For him, he said, you have to remain clean from even good deception. Deception is deception. It's not for you. You're not a spy. So for you, I'm praying not to become a spy. But it doesn't mean that they weren't kosher at that time. They absolutely were kosher. But they didn't stick to Moshe's original plan. And you know what happens when you don't stick to Moshe's plan? There's a possibility to fall. There's a possibility to destroy yourself. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Moshe asks for one thing and they're looking for something else. Now, you have good intentions. That's why Moshe would let it happen. Because they were the best of the best. They were the cream of the crop. They were the creme de la creme. They were the greatest of the Jewish people, Anoshim, distinguished, holy, the leaders of the tribes. They weren't just, your average person that is not worthy. Very worthy men. And what's the lesson from all of this? When you are sent on a shlichus, on a mission from Moshe, from the leader of the generation, you have to be 100%, you have to stick to the shlichus. Don't add and don't subtract. Don't be too smart, don't be left. We don't need you to add. The Rebbe sent a shliach, do what he said.
Right.
Don't look to outsmart anyone. Remain loyal to the mission, to the job. When you look to add, even if you have good intentions, look what you can end up doing. Looking to appoint a new Moshe at the end of it all, which is exactly what happened with the spies. So Moshe says to Yeshua, you I'm praying for. I'm not sure there's a need to pray, because it could be they're going to be great at the end of it all. It could be they're going to go be good spies. And Moshe later in the Torah sent spies on the numerous occasions. When there was a need for it, he sent. In this case, there was no need for it. And therefore, the actual going as a spy messed it up for them. Joshua himself also sent spies. When after Moshe dies and they're ready to go into the land of Israel, he sends two spies to Jericho, exactly. Rachab over there, he calls them Meraglim. No, there's nothing wrong with spies when Moshe sends you as a spy.
But
Yeah, what's your question?
No, that's why I say it's matter of interpretation, of perception. Like I read that they say, they have Choma Misrael.
Right, yeah.
So
walls.
Wall. So Joshua and Caleb. So they have wall. That
means they're afraid.
They weak.
That means they're weak.
For Joshua and Caleb, it means they weak.
That's true.
For them, it meant they strong.
Right.
So it's matter of
no doubt about that. But the problem, even before we get to those interpretations, where before they even went,
They had thought.
Moshe is already detecting that something over here could go wrong. It doesn't mean it will.
Why didn't he pray for Caleb too?
Because he prayed for Yehoshua, which was going to be his successor.
Okay.
It's more important.
That question more important.
All you needed is one.
He needed his successor to be loyal to pure truth. A spy is already not. He's deceptive for good reason. A spy, you have to have spies, but they become deceptive. And God bless them. We need spies, but it's Moshe Emes.
Well, they were true to their mission, right?
They were
Is that what you're saying?
At the end, they weren't. No. At the end,
No, I'm saying at this portion.
At this point, at the beginning, they were. Rashi said they were kosher at that time. But they added. They were looking for what they weren't sent to do. So although they were kosher, but Moshe already detected maybe this, who knows? You don't add. I don't want you to be part of it. Guess what it says later? I'm going to just point out one last point and we'll conclude. It says, and this is an important point as well, Caleb goes and he leaves the whole group and he goes to Hebron. Did you know that? He went to Marat HaMachpelah, to the tomb with the tape.
Oh, right.
We were.
Yeah.
No, Joshua did not go. Only
really?
Caleb went.
Right.
Only
Caleb went. Where did he go? To pray at the graveside of Rabbi Yisroel Spalter. Rashi tells us, and listen to his words. Absolutely wonderful. Where is it?
That's in the Gemara, no?
No, in the Chumash it said
really?
he went to Hebron, Here. And he came to Hebron. It says he came to Hebron in the verse. Vayavo at Hebron. Who's Vayavo? Who's this one person that came to Hebron? So Rashi says it was Caleb. Why did he go there? Caleb alone went there and prostrated himself in prayer over the graves of the patriarchs, so that he should not be persuaded lihiyot ba'atzatam. He did not want to be part of their plot. He also detected a plot. See, he went to pray for himself.
Before the
Just as they came to Israel.
Just as they
Before they
went to
messed
Israel.
up. He went to Hebron.
Wow.
And he prayed not to be part of their plot. The plot could have been good at the end. Not every plot is bad. But they were plotting something. They were doing something Moshe didn't ask. It would be great, But he said, I don't want any part of this. So he goes to the oil, to the graveside of the tzaddik, to the Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and he prays. And he asks them to pray on his behalf. You know that the Gemara says clearly that he asked Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to intercede on his behalf of the Almighty to save him. That means he wrote to them a little note, probably like we do that by the oil. You go to the oil, you write a note, and he asked the Rebbe to pray for you. He asked the Avis, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to pray for them. That he shouldn't be part of the Eitzah, the plot. The plot was not yet negative, but it was a plot. It was something that Moshe didn't tell them. They were plotting something beyond what Moshe told them. It could be trouble. It could be not, but it could be its trouble. And that's why, even though they were kosher, Moshe felt a need to pray for Yehoshua, and Kalev himself felt, I better go to the oil and pray for myself. And asked the Rebbe, the Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to pray for me.
Wow.
May we all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again next Monday night.
Amen.